Hi, we're having an FJ chat with Laura Stoker from AIRS Training. She's a global trainer with AIRS, has flown all the way from Colorado just to be with us at Farrow Jamieson. And a little sidebar to the conference that she attended. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you very much.
So tell us about AIRS as a company. What's the company do overall?
So AIRS, historically what we've been known for is to train recruiters and HR professionals in particular in internet sourcing and specifically finding passive candidates. So over about 20 years of our history, we're going on I think a little bit over 18 years now. That's evolved pretty significantly with social media, with things like LinkedIn, with it just used to be job boards, and you used to use Alta Vista. Google didn't even exist.
Alta Vista.
So
now there's going back.
Yes, it is.
So in terms of the way that you've seen, and I've been to presentations that you've given, and you're an absolute star performer because you have an ability to actually create clarity in what is a very noisy environment. What have you seen in terms of, there's always the new things, but what do you think about the core skill set that we are looking at now coming up to find people? What are the core things that you think are there?
Yeah, I think you just can't sort of follow the herd. You have to be willing to be creative and look in other places. And while using sites like the well-known sites like LinkedIn that everyone uses is important, and it is part of what you need to do. I think it's being able to look at some of the information on sites. Maybe it's Vine or maybe it's Instagram, and being able to find one person who isn't on LinkedIn, but having that willingness to look at those sites while not getting overwhelmed with things that maybe aren't going to be as immediately useful, like maybe Snapchat or, there's a lot of discussion about like, well, how can we recruit using sites like Tinder? Well, I don't know if that's going to be the best use of your time, but it's certainly, I give a lot of kudos to those people that are willing to be that creative. But
well, I suppose anything, if you think about that, anything that encourages you or demands that you put some form of profile before you enter is searchable.
Absolutely.
And so does that mean that is there a sort of an anti-digital in the sense of people saying, "Wow, I'm getting exposed"? Do I sort of peel back a bit?
Yeah, and I think there is obviously that feeling, and certainly you hear it a lot in certain segments like tech and engineering, where there's a lot of candidates that are really well, sought after all the time. They're saying, "I'm taking my profile off of LinkedIn," but there'll still be on places that they tend to frequent for their own personal reasons, like Facebook or other sites. Maybe they like to use Instagram. That's their medium for sort of communicating and staying in touch with their friends and family by showing different pictures, whereas they're not putting their information on a professional site that's over.
I think that we've seen that, and people tend to find out of the multitude of channels, they find their favorites. They find like you say, Pinterest or Instagram or something. So it's a matter of saying, we don't use one tool to find you, but we need to find the tool that you like to see where you are.
Exactly. And so when I train, and I try to do this all the time, is to really get the recruiters or whomever's in the audience to really sort of put themselves in their candidate's shoes. So I ask, what are you using? Are you using social media? Are you on Twitter? You tend to use Twitter a lot, so I might be using that to find other people. But, some people prefer to use Facebook. Some people prefer to use YouTube. You just, it's a different medium. But you have to think, well, I do this personally, so it's a very good likelihood that people that I'm recruiting will be doing that as well.
As long as you know that space. Yeah. So you travel a lot in your role. Your air points must be extraordinary. Yes. Do you notice, in terms of the global differences, US-centric, New Zealand, Australia, differences in terms of the way we approach some of our digital life or our technologies?
Yeah, I actually, I think I've been seeing this in the last year. I've been here, I think this is my third trip to New Zealand in the last year. I know.
Yeah, just having a pretty good
I love it. It's fantastic. But I really see that here, especially in New Zealand, and to some extent in Australia as well, you're really well networked. Like, for example, Meetup as a site to use. I am overwhelmed by the amount of, the number of meetups for very specific niche groups that there are here in Auckland or in Wellington, Australia, for really specific skill sets, especially if you're looking for technical candidates or you're looking for salespeople, Salesforce users. I mean, just really well networked, more so than I see in a lot of other places. And the other thing is, too, even on Twitter, like being at conferences, there's so much activity on Twitter. Everybody here just seems to be like they jumped in with their 2 feet and they like to be in touch with one another. And I think it's great. I think it's really fantastic.
I noticed that I'd been to our hub, the recruitment hub conferences in New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah.
And in Australia, regularly at the conferences, the hashtag is trending #1 every time there's a conference. But in Australia,
nothing. It was in New Zealand, I think, when we were in Australia. It was trending in New Zealand. So.
Yeah, it's just, people sort of jump on. Sometimes I think, are you paying attention to anybody here because you're twitting? So I think if we look at the way that people are starting to engage in these sorts of platforms, what I hear you saying is it's not so much picking platforms to use as picking appropriate platforms for your audience.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, about even Meetup, for example. So Meetup, while the information about a meetup may be online and you can find profiles of people that belong to certain meetup groups, that's taking that and moving it real time. So those people are actually meeting with one another in person. And I find that very encouraging, actually, that they're basically making that leap from digital to actual in-person. So I think that's phenomenal, and specifically for professional. Whereas in the States, I think you find a lot more meetups about people that like jazz music or so it tends to be more professional in nature.
Superb.
I think it's fantastic.
Well, you're about to give a bit of a heads up to our team in terms of some of the things and trips that are going on. We welcome you back. You can come back anytime.
Thank you so much.
You're part of the Farrow Jamieson family.
Thank you so much.
And thanks so much for a quick chat.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thanks, Ian. Wonderful.
Nice to see you.
Nice.